Hi, this is John Leonard. I'm a lawyer at Fairfield Woods in Denver, Colorado. And today we get to talk to one of my partners, Gil Selinger, about Rule 144. It's really important when you're selling stock. And let's find out some bits and pieces about Rule 144 from Gil. Gil, what is Rule 144?
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Rule 144 is an exemption that allows resale of unregistered securities, either in a public or private market. As you can find out from one of our other videos, we go into depth about the necessity to find exemptions from registration for securities, but Rule 144 really deals with the resale of securities. So this is stocks or membership interests in a company that you may have acquired through a public offering, through a private offering, and then later you want to sell them. And in order to sell them, that sale needs to be pursuant to an exemption. And so Rule 144 outlines how that transaction can be exempt and how the security can be exempt so that you can go ahead and sell it or know that you can't in a given circumstance. It involves an analysis of a bunch of different factors, but part of it's also about coordinating with the company whose stock you're trying to sell, because they are going to have an in-depth relationship with the transaction and approving it or not approving it or telling you things you need to know, but they need to know.
Is it safe to say if you own stock in a private company, one that's not registered on the New York Stock Exchange, if you buy stock in a small company that's not on the stock exchange, and then you want to resell it after a year or so, you still need to comply with Rule 144. That's what we're talking about today.
Right, or you need to figure out whether or not compliance is necessary. So you don't know automatically that you're going to have to jump through all the hoops, but you have to find out whether or not it applies to you in a given circumstance.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, so if I'm a company and I've issued stock, let's say I've sold stock to you, why do I, as a company, why would I care if you resold it or not? Why is that an issue for the issuer company?
I mean, the issuer company has to comply with this rule. This rule is promulgated by the SEC, and it's their way of creating some stability in the secondary markets for the sale and resale of securities. So for the company wants to know that all of these factors are being complied with so that the company doesn't get in trouble and find itself that it has run afoul of this rule, has gotten in trouble with the SEC, could end up with fines or penalties, or that the transaction itself could be invalidated for not having complied with the rules.
Well, let's go ahead.
And what the company is really looking at and what you need to be looking at in terms of whether or not the rule applies there's 5 main factors. The first is a holding period, and in your example there, you said 1 year, and it depends whether the holding period is 1 year or it can only be 6 months, and there's some issues that you can analyze to determine when that holding period starts and when it ends. So the bottom line is that you have to have held the stock for a certain amount of time. After that, you have to make sure that there is enough current public information for the buyer of the 144 stock to make a valid and reasonable investment decision. And that's one of those rules that permeates all of the securities laws, is that ultimately securities laws are there to make sure that people have the right information to make the right decisions for them for investing. So again, making sure that there's enough current public information that the person can make a good decision. There is also a requirement related to trading volume of that stock. If it's a public stock, you have to look at a time period, how many shares of the stock have been traded in that time period, and it can only be a percentage of that number. That generally only really matters when you're talking about a publicly traded entity. And then the last two issues are that the transaction needs to be an ordinary brokerage transaction, that you're not using a broker, you're not paying commissions on the transaction, or more than a normal commission. And then finally, you have to file a notice of proposed sale with the SEC. That's within a 3 months.
Let's jump quickly to why, as a seller of the stock, you need to be concerned about that.
Well,
not the issuing company.
Sure, a seller of the stock wants to make sure they can sell the stock. and they want to make sure they can sell it legally. So in order to do that, they both need to make sure that the rule applies to them, because the rule deals with both insiders and non-insiders, and there are different issues for those people. And
Yeah.
then also the seller of the stock also wants to make sure that the company is okay with it, because the companies also have to generally approve or tell the seller what they want in order for the transaction to happen. And usually 144 stock is restricted. So it's got a legend on the back of the share certificate that says this stock can't be traded except X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z are usually talking to the company and getting a legal opinion and
Yeah.
confirming that this rule has been complied with.
Well, look, I walk by your open door enough to know you do a lot of this. You deal a lot with 144 stock. It's a real rat's nest. And if you're listening to this video, you own some stock and you want to sell it, please call Gil. Gil, thanks for joining us today.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, John.